When my dad died, I felt lost. I felt hopeless. I felt alone. Really, my dad was my best friend, and all of a sudden he was gone. And so I remember leaving high school and coming to college, and in a sense it was an escape. I got to leave my old life behind and go and start a new one where I just focused on myself. And I remember as I drove up to the exit of the highway coming off and seeing the stadium there, all I could think about was football, and I could think about myself. Football was my identity. I found meaning, I found happiness, I found closeness like I had really never felt since he died within my teammates. These were guys that I went to war with, these are guys that I sweat with, I bled with, I cried with. Probably the closest community that I had ever felt up until that point, but it was lacking something. So I first met Andy at freshman two-a-days. He was a couple years older than me. We played on the offensive line together, and we became friends pretty quickly. And at that point, we had football in common, and we had partying in common. And I remember it was about my sophomore year when all of a sudden Andy's life did like a U-turn, and he became a different person. And I asked him one day, after not seeing him out at parties for probably a good couple months, and I said, "Hey man, what's going on with you? Did you get in trouble? Grades bad? You get a girlfriend? You on lockdown? What is it?" And he just kind of simply just looked at me, and he was like, "You know, I dedicated my life to Christ. I'm a Christian, and I just don't feel like I can live like that anymore." I kind of looked at him and just said, "Well, I'm a Christian too, man. Like, are you going to go to the kegger tonight or what?" It just didn't click with me. And we would get into these conversations that would sometimes last hours, and they would revolve around spiritual things. They would revolve around Jesus. And for those minutes, it was like, man, I was connecting with something more than I had ever experienced. The interesting part was, as soon as I was away from Andy, it was kind of like I forgot about that, because I didn't want to change. I saw how Andy's life changed when he found this Jesus that he was telling me about, and I didn't really want that, because I thought I had the life that everybody wanted to live. You know, I was captain of the football team, living a high life, partying, seemed to have the girls' attention. I was doing well in school. I was told I was going to go to the next level and play in the NFL, and I had everything I could ever want. And so when I was with Andy, this whole God thing seemed really great, but then I kind of did my own thing on the side. So the first time I heard the gospel, I didn't become a Christian. It kind of made sense to me. It kind of resonated with me a little bit. It did something to me that I couldn't really explain, but at the same time, I wasn't really receptive to it. So I would say my defining moment when I actually gave my life to Christ happened after a night of actually partying. At that point in my life, I was trying to be a good person. I had cleaned up my life. I got out of the drug scene. I got out of the drinking scene for the most part. One of my buddies came home for the weekend and said, "Hey, we're going to throw a party," and he threw down a wad of hundreds on the table and said, "We're going to get nuts, and it's all going to be on me." And I kind of just looked at him and said, "Hey man, I'm trying to keep my nose clean and stay out of trouble here." And he just kind of looked at me and said, "Hey, don't be weird like Andy." And I remember we had this big party at my house and everything was good. I was just kind of sipping on some Gatorade, hanging out with the guys, and he came up to me with a bottle of liquor and said, "Hey man, you're my best friend in the world. Have a shot with me." One turned into a bottle. We ended up going to the bar in a drunken stupor. We started fighting. Cops were called. We got picked up. We got arrested. We got ticketed. They let us go. And I remember waking up the next morning feeling so bad but could not figure out why. And so I went about my whole day trying to forget about it. I even went to church because I thought that would make me forget about the way I was feeling. But I got home and sat around my room the whole day just feeling so bad with such a heavy heart. And I went to go to bed that night and I couldn't even sleep. And so in the middle of the night, I think it was like around 1 o'clock in the morning, I freaked out and like ran over to Andy's house. And I pounded on his door, woke him up, and he opened the door and he was like, "What's up, man?" And I just kind of unloaded on him. And in that moment, I was looking for him to kind of say something to make me feel better. But he just kind of looked at me and said, "Okay." And so as I realized that he wasn't going to say anything, I was like, well, this kind of stinks. So I went home. And as I rolled in bed, for some reason, I just grabbed my Bible. And I don't remember what I was reading that night, but I do remember very clearly that night I began to see that as we grow closer to God, that we start to see our sin more clearly. And it was right then that I found myself praying to a God that I said I knew for a while, but didn't even know until that night. You know, when I asked Andy what it was that made him different, what it was I was seeing in his life, he told me. He engaged me with the gospel. And as he engaged me with that truth, my life changed forever. You know, I look back at my life, and even my father's death would come into college, and all the relationships that I formed on the team that kind of left holes in my life still. And I realized that the gospel was the only thing that was truly fulfilling to me. I want to ask you to be an Andy. On October 11th, 2012, college students from around the country will be taking a day to engage their campuses, to engage the students around them with the gospel. This is what Engage24 is all about. From Ohio to Florida to Texas, all across the United States, on 10, 11, 12, we will be engaging our campuses with the gospel. Can you imagine what it would be like if every single one of us committed to sharing the gospel with just one person? Could God use you to be an Andy in someone's life? Will you be a part of Engage24?